Welcome back. This is part 6 of the locator. We're going to start placing some dimensions in here. Before we actually place the dimensions, I'm going to click on the Format pull-down menu, click Text Style, and I want you to select Annotative as the text style that we're going to use. I also want you to select Roman D for the font name. Roman D stands for Roman Duplex. I want you to change this text height to 0.125 and make certain that the annotative check mark has been placed there. I want you to make the width factor 0.85, then click Apply and Close. Now we'll click Format. We'll click on Dimension Style, and just as before, I want the annotative dimension style to be active. So click on this, then click Set Current and Modify. We're going to modify these dimension variables. I like to start out with the Text tab, and I want you to make certain that all the dimension variables appear in your file just as they do here. When you've completed that, click on symbols and arrows and change all of your dimension variables to appear just as they do on this tab. Next, click on lines and change your dimension variables so that they reflect what you see right here. When you're done with that, click on primary units and change your dimension variables to reflect what you see on this screen. When you're done, click OK. Then click Close. Make certain that your dimensions layer is the active layer, and we're going to start by drawing a circle. I'm going to make the radius of that circle 1 unit. I'll repeat that command and place the center of the next circle at a quadrant. And I'm going to give it a radius of 0.75. We'll right-click, repeat the command. We'll place another circle exactly at a quadrant, and just as before, we'll give it a radius of 0.75. I'm going to click the Dimension pull-down menu, select Linear Dimension, and I'll dimension from this point to this point and anchor that dimension to a quadrant right here. I'll repeat that command and dimension now from this point to this point and anchor that dimension to a quadrant right here. I'll repeat the command and place a dimension between this point and anchor that dimension to this quadrant. Let's move these 3 circles. I'll select them individually and move them from that center point over to here. I'll left click on this rotate tool, select all of those circles, and I'm going to rotate them about the center, but I'm going to rotate them by a -90 degrees. So I'll just type in -90 and we'll put them into that position. Let's select that linear dimension tool, and I'm going to dimension from this point to this point, and I'm going to anchor that dimension to a quadrant right here. We'll repeat the command and dimension from this point to an endpoint over here, and anchor that dimension to a quadrant right here. Now let's move these three circles. And I'm going to move them from that center point over to this point. Now I pulled along a dimension with me that I didn't really want to, so I'm going to undo that. And I'll use this copy command instead to select those three circles and copy them over to this point. Now I don't need two sets of circles in here, so I'm going to delete those. I'll click Dimension, Linear, and I'm going to dimension from this point to this point, and I'm going to anchor that dimension to a quadrant right here. I'll right click to repeat the command, and I'm going to dimension from this point to this point and anchor the dimension to a quadrant right here. I'll right click, repeat the linear dimension, and this time I'm going to dimension from this point to this point and anchor that dimension to a quadrant right here. As you can see, I have two dimensions that are interfering with one another. One is obscuring the other. I'm going to click on this, and then I'm going to click on that handle and just drag that dimension straight up so that those two dimensions do not interfere with one another. Now I'm going to use the Move command. I'm going to select these circles and move them from that center point over to either this point, the midpoint, or here. It doesn't really matter which. And then I'm going to rotate those same three circles about the center of that, and I'll rotate them 90 degrees in the other direction. Let's place a linear dimension between this point and this point and anchor that dimension to a quadrant right here. The next thing I want to do is create an angular dimension. I'm going to create an angular dimension between this line and this line. And I'll place that dimension over here. Now let's use that Move command. I'm going to select these three circles again and move them from this point over to here. And I'll use that Rotate tool to select all three of those circles and rotate them exactly 180 degrees. I'm going to place a dimension, a linear dimension, between this point and this point. And anchor that dimension to a quadrant right here. Now I'm going to rotate these three circles about the center of that one, and I want to rotate them into this position. I'm going to create another linear dimension, and dimension from here to here, and I'll anchor that dimension to a quadrant right here. Let's repeat that command. Let's dimension from here to here. Right click and anchor the dimension to a quadrant right here. As you can see, those dimensions interfere with one another, and I'm going to have to move them. But there's something also that I want to point out. This dimension and this dimension are exactly the same. That means one of them is superfluous or unneeded, so one of them should be eliminated. Let's move these three circles and I'm going to move them from that center to the apparent intersection of this line and that line, and rotate those three circles about this center, but I'm going to rotate them into this position. I'm going to place another dimension. It'll be a linear dimension, and we'll dimension from this point to this point and anchor that dimension at that quadrant. I'll select those three circles and delete them. And after a quick inspection, I think we've dimensioned everything that we need to. So the next thing to do is take a look at what it looks like in the title block. The next thing we're going to do is fill out this title block. We'll do that in another episode of this.